What's up everybody, Demon back. Welcome to a brand new video, and this is going to be my Kong Skull Island spoilers review. Now this one is going to be a lot of fun to do. I had a great time seeing this movie, and we're going to go through every little bit of it. So one thing I want to make clear here at the start is that I've only seen this movie once up to now. I saw it on the 1st of March. The movie officially comes out on the 10th of March. I got pre-screening tickets, and I'll get a little bit into my pre-screening experience here just because a lot of people were curious about that, as well as at the end of the video I'll play clips of my experience at the movie theater. So what happened was I was actually sent an email, and the email contained a link. When I clicked the link, it took me straight to a website that got me verified automatically. All I had to do was type in my email, got verified, and bam, I got my tickets sent straight to me. I got them printed out, and there you go. It was a pretty sweet deal, and this might happen for multiple of these legendary Warner Brothers co-production movies. Hopefully they do it again for me for Godzilla 2. I had a great time going to this, and I would love to go see Godzilla 2, Godzilla King of Monsters, when it comes out eventually, as well as Pacific Rim 2 and any other joint production movie, any other kaiju movie, or just any other good movie they put out in general. I'd love to go see that. In fact, I hope more studios reach out to me like this and help me out here. So let's get into my experience going to this premiere. This was my first premiere that I've ever seen, the first time I've ever seen a movie before it officially came out. I have been to midnight showings before, but those are a lot different than this. This one, I showed up to the theater 4 hours early with my dad. We showed up about 4 hours early. There was this big huge line, this big huge stairwell. We were about halfway on this big huge stairwell when we got there. We were about halfway there. So there was not too many people in front of us, only about, I'd say, like 24 people in front of us. And we just kind of sat on the stairs. Then the line started to fill up after about 30 minutes. Once we got an hour into our wait, my dad pulled out his phone. Luckily, he downloaded King Kong 1976 on his phone, so we just wound up watching that movie while we waited, which is pretty good because that movie is like Kong Skull Island in the fact that they are both King Kong movies, take place in the 70s, and have a larger Kong than was ever featured before. Although King Kong vs. Godzilla's Kong was bigger than both of these Kongs, it's just a matter of these were the biggest American Kongs ever featured for their time. After that, we watched the movie. We didn't get to finish the movie because they eventually pulled people up and started going through the ticket checking process. For whatever reason, they kind of were like, everyone stand up, get your tickets ready, and then they waited like a whole hour before they started to let people in. Now, what they did was, there were so many people that they actually had to start pulling out the front of the line pass people. The front of the line pass people are only supposed to wait at the front of the line. That's where the name comes from, obviously. But they had to pull them out and start a whole second line for those people, just because there was so many people crowding up this stairwell that they had to get them out of there. There were so many different aisles on this stairwell, and it filled up so fast. Hundreds and hundreds of people there. It was incredible. We were one of the first ones in. I was actually the first person not to get a Kong t-shirt. They were giving out free t-shirts. I was the first person in line not to get one. I was just unlucky. I was one person behind. They gave out the last one right in front of me. It sucked. Then I got in the theater. We got pretty decent seats, as you guys saw in that video I posted from inside the theater. I got to sit next to quite a bit of nice people. My dad was on one side. There was a nice girl on the other side. Her family was pretty nice. Then one of my viewers was actually, I don't know why he didn't say hello to me, but he was there, he saw me, and then he told me on Instagram later that he saw me. He had a pretty sick Kong shirt, so I did notice him, and I did think that shirt was cool in the theater. I should have said hi to him because I guess he watches my videos, which is pretty sweet. Yeah, once the movie started, it was really cool. We had a local TV host come in, and he introduced it for us all. It was pretty cool. I didn't know who he was, but everyone seemed to love him. He seemed to be a really nice guy. He is, I guess I shouldn't say a local TV host. He is just a international, or maybe just national. Like I said, I've never heard of this guy. He showed up. He was really nice. He's a national, I should say, national talk show host that just operates from our hometown. So that was really cool to see him there, even though I didn't know who he was. He did a Facebook live stream, which I mean, Who would have thought that some guy would do a Facebook live stream and, you know, have some famous Godzilla YouTuber in it? That was probably the highlight for everyone, was when they saw my blurry face zip past the camera. You know, there's me. You know, he did this live stream, introduced the movie, said he saw it that morning, and it was incredible. I was really hyped for the movie, although I did have some, like, reservations, thinking, did the trailer show us too much? Once the movie started, it was absolutely amazing. The first scene throws you right in. Now let's get into these spoilers. So this is going to be the biggest spoiler review I've done. It's going to be way more in depth than the Shin Godzilla reviews, way more in depth than Godzillathon, I think, or maybe on the same level as Godzillathon. But let's get into this. The plot of the movie, we are throwing straight in. Introduction: a plane falling from the sky. We hear screaming. A young Hank Marlowe stands up after this plane crashes into the ground. A parachute drops. Young Hank Marlowe stands up. He looks up. A Japanese soldier lands just in front of him, and a gunfight breaks out. A gunfight breaks out. It is really intense. So the two start chasing each other around, firing at each other. I knew what was coming. Alright, so there was theories leading up to this movie that one of the shots we saw in the trailers was going to be the introduction to this movie, or it was just going to be a flashback to how Marlowe wound up on the island. I dismissed it. I thought that Tom Hiddleston was the one on the ground in this scene, and that the person holding the knife to him was some other character, maybe Toby Kibble, I thought. No, it is a young Hank Marlowe and a Japanese soldier. The Japanese soldier stabs... Oh, this scene is brutal to watch. So he pulls out a katana after they run out of bullets. He goes to stab Hank right straight through his chest. Oh, so Hank being John C. Reilly's character, this is a younger one, he grabs the katana, and you just watch it slide through his fingers, and it starts cutting apart his hand, and you just see the blood going everywhere. It is just, oh, I can't stand that, just knowing, that must hurt so bad. So, this blade's coming right at him. You know, he nearly gets stabbed by it. He gets pinned to the ground. The guy, this Japanese soldier, pulls out a knife, goes to stab him, and Hank grabs his arm, holding it up. All of a sudden, massive hand flies up over the mountain, smashes down. They look to the other side. Another massive hand rises up, smashes in, and then the head of Kong rises above both of them. The horizon in the background, the sun blaring down on them. They both just look up at him. They are just in awe. Cut to the opening credits. It's insane. It is just, they run to this edge of the cliff. That is when everyone, I think, who saw that first trailer knew it was coming. It is so much cooler than you'll think it is when the hand is smashed down. It is so cool. So, scene one, I was already way into this movie. Now, cut to, quote-unquote, modern day, aka the 70s, we see Bill Randa and Houston Brooks. These are the characters played by John Goodman as well as Corey Hawkins, pitching Monarch's last expedition to the last uncharted place on Earth. Now, when I say last expedition, they talk a little bit about the politics of Monarch, how it was founded in right after World War II. Truman believed in it, believed in the monsters. He funded the attacks on Godzilla, which they never mention Godzilla by name in this movie, but he funds the attacks on Godzilla. It's really cool. So we get into a bit of the politics. No one really believes in Monarch because I guess none of the information was passed down to anyone other than the president, and the president has decided that the current president of the 70s, I believe it's Nixon at this point, has decided it is not necessary to continue funding Monarch. So they're going to their last expedition before they run out of budget, and you know, it winds up being the thing that saves their company, showing that there is a need for Monarch, yet at the same time it winds up costing a lot of lives. So they pitch it as a mapping expedition. There's some pretty funny jokes about what monster are you hunting this time. They pitch it as a mapping exploration to see if Brooks' theories of the Hollow Earth are true. Now, his theories of the Hollow Earth are brought up multiple times throughout this movie. We'll get into what they are here in a little bit. We find out that the Castle Bravo test in 1954 was the test that was done trying to kill some sort of monster. I guess we're supposed to know in this movie that the monster in the Castle Bravo test was unphotographed. Otherwise, I feel like more people would be willing to fund Monarch. Like, the president would fund Monarch if he saw Godzilla being bombed, then he'd know, oh shoot, these things are real. But I guess we're supposed to assume that, at least at this point, no known footage exists of that, because we do see in the opening scrolls of 2014 that there is footage of Godzilla being bombed. We also see that in that PowerPoint that Serizawa shows Ford. Anyways, this is the same monsters revealed later. This is the same monster, presumably. It's never stated directly, but we can assume that killed Randa's parents, which is a super cool connection. The fact that Bill Randa, this guy who goes to Skull Island and runs into Kong, his family was killed by Godzilla. That's an awesome reference. Godzilla wound up, actually, we find out, killing his family like 30 years before, which does put us in some awkward grounds, because we know that Godzilla was awakened in 1954. 30 years before the 70s is not 1954, so it could be a different monster, could be the one from Godzilla Awakening. However, they do allude to the fact that it's Godzilla a couple times. After all this, the expedition is passed on account of the Americans need to map this island before the Russians do. Cut to Vietnam. All these soldiers, they're out, they're just having a great time, they're making jokes, they're packing up their stuff. It's at this big, huge outpost. They are just super excited because the war has just, quote-unquote, ended. If you know your history about the Vietnam War, and they even somewhat address this partway in the movie, we didn't really win the war, nor did it end. The Vietnam War, we just kind of backed out. America backed out. We left that place in some bad territory, and we caused a lot of problems by leaving the way we did. After we promised support for them, we backed out and caused some problems. Packard is not happy about that. He is just, he sees it the way it is, as America abandoning the war, and he sees that as a problem. However, he's just going to follow his orders. Anyways, they're all having a good time because they know they get to go back to their families. Jack, Toby Kibble's character, mentions the fact that he really needs to get back to his little kids, and his little kid is having a birthday coming up soon, and he really wants to get back before then. We have some other characters talk about their mothers, and we get some better fleshed out characters in this mix that are Jack, I don't know why I said his name so weird, Jack, aka Toby Kibble, Mills, aka Jason Mitchells, Cole, aka the grenade guy from the trailers. No one's going to know that actor's name, so I'm just going to call, and same with the next guy, so I'm just going to call them by what people would recognize them from as the trailers. And then this is the only guy, I don't know how to say his name, I think it's Silvak, is the bandana guy from the trailers. So Packard, he has to leave his men and his war, and it's unfinished. He's not happy about that. Him and these men have a really strong bond, and he just does not want to leave them. He also does not want to leave this war in the state that it's in. There's a great scene, he's sitting there looking at his medals, and he's just going, all of this for what? We didn't even accomplish anything. We're just leaving. So he is, like I keep saying, he is not happy about the situation. So he is more than ecstatic when he gets a call and answers it from Monarch about the island expedition requiring a military escort. And so he is going to join in their expedition, help them out, do what they need, and get them on this island, map it, and then head back out. That's what he thinks is going on. And this also gives him one last mission with his men, so he really wants to take it. Randa and Brooks head into a bar in Thailand. I think it's Thailand. It's somewhere in China, but I think it's Thailand. So we see Conrad, ex-SAS military agent that he's turned into a tracker / mercenary. We very first see him, he actually gets into a bar fight. So the first thing we see him do, he breaks this pool stick over someone's head and then slams someone else into a wall. It's pretty cool. He is persuaded to join the expedition to Skull Island after getting, in the trailers it makes it look like twice, he gets 5 times his offering pay plus a bonus if they make it back. Due to the dangers of mapping an uncharted island in the South Pacific, he knows that this is a high-risk, low-reward situation if he doesn't get a huge payment from it. After this, we see Weaver. She's a photographer, a war photographer that has some experience getting down and dirty to find the truth. She's been in Vietnam during the war. She goes into these situations to get pictures to show people in America what is actually going on in Vietnam. Packard blames her for the reason that America had to abandon the war because all the citizens due to people like her, wound up losing support for the military and not wanting to fund them or help them out in this war anymore. This caused a lot of problems. There was a lot of protests back then, and Packard blames people like her, these war photographers who, quote-unquote, uncovered the truth, but in his eyes showed a very specific version of it. The ship sets sail, everyone's filled in on the plan, fly through this low pressure point in the storm. There's very few of these, and they have to time this right, otherwise they're going to get killed by this storm. So they have to time this one right. They have to get in there through this low pressure point, set up base camp, get the helicopters loaded with explosives, and then drop them on the island, drop these explosives on the island so that it'll map the surface of the Earth through vibration. When they reach the outer limits of the storm, it is revealed that it is too dangerous for the ship to pass through. As a result, the helicopter platoon will be sent in by Packard, who is leading the expedition with Randa. They will be cut off from the outside world, and their only chance to escape the island in case something goes wrong is in a few days, when the ship can sail around the storm system to the north side of the island in time, and then the main, like, everyone on the island has to get to the north side of the island in time to be picked up by this helicopter, this big helicopter brigade. They're going to perform evac, and there's no way to know if it's going to go right or wrong due to the fact that they just have no contact with the outside world. Packard decides it's safe enough to enter this storm system, so he takes everyone in their helicopters through the storm. He gives a speech along the way about Icarus from mythology, who was given wings but flew too close to the sun. They burnt off. He fell into the ocean. Jackson says the U.S. military is not a irresponsible father, unlike Icarus is, and so they will be able to do the right thing. They have provided everything everyone needs, and they would never deceive someone, and they would never, even though Icarus's father warned him, don't fly too close to the sun, they're in good shape, is pretty much the gist of his speech. Alright, they make it through the storm system alright, arrive on Skull Island, brief scares in the storm, no one gets struck by lightning or anything like that, they make it through alright. The operation kicks off real quickly, we waste no time, we see a little bit of Skull Island, see how beautiful it is, see just these incredible real-life locations. God, they filmed on location, looks absolutely gorgeous. So, yeah, they do indeed wind up mapping the island with explosives. The whole point, although, yes, there were the intentions to wake up the monsters, get evidence of the monsters, the whole point was to find out if this Hollow Earth theory is true. The Hollow Earth theory, as Corey Hawkins explains, is there are hollow pockets of Earth that provided protection for creatures during a mass extinction level event. Thousands of years ago, massive unidentified terrestrial organisms could have burrowed in these to avoid death and come out in the new world untouched by what wiped out the rest of these creatures. That is the gist of the Hollow Earth theory. It is turned out to be true. Yes, the Hollow Earth theory is true. Skull Island is a big Hollow Earth area. So the mission continues for only a few minutes before, as it is about to kick off into full-scale operations. So this is when they're all going to split up and map the island in a full-scale search. This is just going to like speed everything up, and all the helicopters are about to split up. Before this happens, a tree just flies out of nowhere over the horizon, nails this helicopter. The helicopter crashes to the ground. All of a sudden, another helicopter is flying around. They're freaking out. What just happened? A hand zooms past the camera, slaps the side of this helicopter. We're inside of it. We start spinning to the ground. The camera angles. We start spinning to the ground right before we crash. Something catches it. It slowly moves up. We see through this open door, you know, it reveals Kong, and he's lifting it up. You see through the side hatch. Kong lifts it above his head, shaking it. He watches the people fall out. There's a couple people fall out. One man slips and actually catches himself on a railing, and Kong roars. This is, so I'm not happy about this, but at the same time, they do it right. So Kong roars. The man slips and falls. He doesn't have a good grip. He slips and falls straight into Kong's mouth, and Kong eats him. Now, we cut away before we actually see Kong close his mouth. That's the only thing we don't see. Yeah, it's 100% this guy just got eaten by Kong. He falls straight into Kong's mouth. We see him like enter, like right where he's like at the tongue, and then we cut away close-up shot of Randa's mouth as he takes a bite of a sandwich. It implies that this guy, yeah, he just got eaten. So I'm not happy about the fact that Kong ate someone in the movie. I really don't think that works well, and in the movie they do it alright. By that I mean Kong doesn't intentionally eat him. He's just looking at this helicopter above him. He roars, and his vibrations from his roar winds up knocking this guy right into his mouth. We actually don't even see Kong fully eat the guy. I'm really happy about that. We cut away before we actually see it. It is like a gag, a visual gag, because we cut to someone eating a sandwich, but either way, I think it's better that we don't see Kong actually eat the guy. I think that would dehumanize Kong too much to the point where he's unlikable, and this movie does a really good job later on making Kong likable, which is why this one just doesn't fit for me, and I don't like it. I've talked about this a lot in videos. I wish Kong didn't eat people. One of the things that I hated about King Kong Lives is that he eats people. He even gets like one dude's like skull stuck in his teeth at one point. Oh, gross. Just dumb. And, you know, Gargantuas are the only ones who can get away with it. Green Gargantua, Gyra, because he's a bad guy. Only the bad guy Kaiju can get away with it. The scariest Kaiju of all times, Reptilicus, he can get away with it only because he's the bad guy. Beast from 20,000 Fathoms gets away with it because he's the bad guy. Kong's the good guy. You don't have the good guy eat someone. That is just, that's too much. So, I wasn't happy about that. Like I said, though, they do show it. They show it in a way that I didn't have a big problem with it, and I actually wound up smiling a lot during that scene in the theaters, even though I have talked a lot about how I didn't want Kong to eat people. Also, we were inside that Kong VR that we got. We did fall straight into Kong's mouth, so we did know this was coming, that Kong was going to eat this guy. We hear Packard on the radio saying something has just taken out this helicopter. This is one of the best shots in the movie. Slow reveal. Kong, we see like these helicopters flying from his feet, slow reveal, all the way panning up his body. He's standing in front of this glowing orange sun. We see him rise up in front of it. This big, huge shadow casts over all the helicopters. Is that a monkey? And bam, he goes for it. So Packard just starts open fire. Everyone's firing on Kong. Kong's taken aback by these guns. At first, he's had no experience to this. Then he lunges into action. He flies through the air. Kong just punches some into rocks, throws one into a rock, into the ground, it explodes. He grabs one, smashes it into another. It is so cool. So every single helicopter here, every single helicopter is destroyed. If you saw this trailer and thought what I thought, which was, oh dang, we have survivors, obviously not every helicopter is going to get destroyed. Someone's going to make it out of that. Nope. No. Kong wipes all of them out. So what happens is he destroys every helicopter. He knocks Conrad's. He like knocks it. I don't remember what he does. He knocks it out of the air. It doesn't explode or anything like that. It just flies into the jungle and gets caught in some trees. Everyone like gets thrown out of it. It crashes but does not explode. Kong grabs Jack's chopper. He grabs it by the back, and the back propeller tears open his hand. He lets go of the thing, and it spins out way west on the island. It spins way west, way out of the way. Packard is knocked. His helicopter's knocked into another helicopter. His helicopter crashes into a tree, splits in half, explodes. Well, it doesn't necessarily fully explode, but some of it explodes, and then he falls out of it. This is just so dang cool. So, oh man, Kong, he's chasing after helicopters, decking them out of the air. He jumps up, like, he like body slams some helicopters. So cool. So, all the choppers are down. After this point, Kong destroys almost every other chopper. Only 4 helicopters have survivors after this attack. So Packard looks up at Kong. This is an amazing shot. Packard looks up at Kong as you just see like people running past Packard in this field. They're on fire. They're dying. Packard's just staring up at Kong. You see Kong grab this helicopter, tear it in half. You're seeing people just pouring out of it. Just so many people were in this one helicopter. They're falling through the air, crashing to the ground. They're dying. Just so much death in this scene. It's so cool. So this also doesn't give you a minute to rest either, because immediately what does Kong do after he tears this helicopter open? He grabs it, throws it into the ground. It's a slow-mo shot. Throws it into the ground. We see him like throwing it into the ground. His hands smash it into the ground. Huge fireball takes up the full screen. All we see is Packard staring directly into Kong's eyes through this huge fireball. The two look at each other. Kong gets all angry, like looks like he's about to kill him, and then Kong, he doesn't. He grabs a different helicopter and then blows that one up. And then, some people are running away from this. Kong's walking after him. You see them just get smashed. He steps right on. They just explode under a seat. He's walking. He's mad. He goes into the base camp. I actually thought Brooks, Corey Hawkins' character, I thought he died here at this point. He doesn't. I don't know how he makes it out of this. I'm going to have to see this again because I don't think he should have made it out of this. So Kong walks into base camp, smashes both his hands into the ground, digs one of his hands under the earth, and then whips it through the air with everyone on it, and they just go flying. So all these people are dead. I don't know, like I said, I don't know how Corey Hawkins lived because Brooks is right in that area when that happened. So he must have had the best luck in that situation. Now we cut to Conrad. He spots Kong leaving this area after all this is done. He spots Kong leaving, and they're in a peaceful area. He's looking through these binoculars, and Conrad also spots some of Packard's group, who is headed in a different direction in search of Jack, the only survivor that they know from the crash that went way west that lived. He is the only survivor that lived. So the helicopter crashes, he gets out and then radios in saying, "Hey, I'm out here way west, can anyone come pick me up?" And Packard says, "Yeah, we'll come to you." So now everyone attempts to regroup. This is a great scene. So Cole and Mills have a little conversation about, Mills basically just is like, "We just got taken out by a monkey the size of a building." Then we just see Cole as he's like, "Yep, that was an unusual encounter," and he's eating food, and they're like, "How are you eating food right now?" He's like, "A man's gotta eat." It's pretty funny. So actually, Cole is one of my favorite characters of this movie. Really tragic what happens to him at the end of the movie. Worst death of the movie with him. So sad. Spoilers, I guess. In a spoiler review, I guess I spoiled something ahead of time. So yeah, he's a great character. Everyone in this movie is really good with the characters. They're all really good. So Cole and him have a little conversation. It's pretty funny. Packard confronts Randa. This is an awesome scene. Packard confronts Randa about the deception in this situation. This is where we find out, not by name, but we find out that Godzilla was the one responsible for killing Randa's family. Super cool. Also, the sneak peeks that we got leading up to the movie, they're not accurate at all. Alright, so there's lots of footage missing from these sneak peeks. If you thought they were continuous shots like I did, don't worry, there's like weird music cues in them. I thought that was just because the music in this movie wasn't going to be great. Nope, that's not the case. It's just actually the fact that they cut these apart so that these clips looked a lot shorter. They're actually extended, even from the sneak peeks we saw, they're extended. So don't worry about that. They are really cool. When you see the full conversation here, it's a great conversation. Everyone heads off in search with Jack, with Packard's group directly looking for them and Conrad's group trying to catch up to Packard. Along the way, Packard and his crew encounter a forest with there's trees and there's these super long bamboo stumps everywhere. You know what this is. I know what this is. No one's prepared for what happens, alright? This is one of those spoilers that I hate the fact that I'm gonna spoil, because this is one of those things you gotta see in the movie for yourself. It's a jump scare for sure, and it worked. It's the only jump scare that worked on me. By the way, that girl who sat next to me, I thought it was pretty funny. She must have been like only a couple years older than me. These jump scares worked completely on her. She would jump on all of them and like land on me, and she'd be like, "Sorry," every single time. I was like, "It's fine." So it was pretty funny. Yeah, these jump scares, this was the only one in the whole movie that got me. Even like the skull crawlers have a couple jump scares. They didn't get me either. So this one got me though. So you see one soldier, he like hears a noise or something, looks straight up in the air. This huge chunk of bamboo, this sharpened bamboo, just goes straight down his throat. It flies straight through his throat, like goes straight through his body, comes out the other side, comes out his bottom half, just tears straight through him. He's dead. everyone's like, what just happened? They're all staring at him, trying to figure out what's going on. He's just dead, looking straight up, mouth wide open. This big bamboo stump entered straight through his mouth and tore all the way down through his body. So everyone's staring at him like, ooh, what is going on? And everyone's all confused. One of them notices 7 different trees start moving around them. Then they realize, oh, that's not a big stick of bamboo that just got like impaled down this dude's throat. That's a spider's leg, and that's the 8th leg of the spider. So spider starts walking, massive spider. They all look up at it. It's a pretty creepy scene if you don't like spiders. I'm fine with spiders for the most part. So it takes a little time for them to start. Okay, I said that wrong. It takes little time for them to start open fire attacking this guy. They shoot him up, and it's not working very much. One of the crab pinchers, he's got 2 of them on each side. They keep reaching down. They're trying to kill everybody. The spider's like trying to eat them, and so he's reaching out for them with these crab pincers. He's trying to kill them, and then all of a sudden his stomach opens up. I thought it was blood in my trailer breakdowns. A lot of people thought it was tentacles in my trailer breakdowns. It's not. He has a whole inner body of retractable arms that start shooting out from inside his body, latching on to, I think they latch on to mills. They start lifting him off the ground, and everyone's shooting at them, trying to kill this thing. They can't seem to break any of these arms. They're trying to shoot at it. It's not working. Like, none of the bullets are affecting him. One of the guys comes up with the idea, what if we cut off its legs? So they all just start taking out these blades, slicing straight through the spider's legs. It's toppling down over itself. It falls on the ground. Its retractable arms let go of Mills. He gets out of there mostly safe, mostly unscratched. He is like freaked out, but he's fine for the most part. So he gets out of there alive. Everyone actually makes it out of this encounter alive, I think, other than the one dude who got stabbed straight through the neck, straight through the throat. So Packard walks up to the front of the spider and shoots it in the face a few times and kills it. Finally, after all that, it was a really intense scene when you see it in the movie. The music is pretty sweet too. The tension builds really well. That jump scare comes out of nowhere. I spoiled it for all of you guys. You wanted to know that, but I wish I didn't because it comes out of nowhere. It's super cool. Anyways, during all this, Conrad and crew pass a massive water buffalo that is roughly the same size as Kong from 1933. If it was exactly the same size, I wouldn't be surprised. This movie is filled with little Easter eggs and references. Anyways, it's also another tense scene because there's this moment you don't know if Sylvok is going to shoot this thing in the face and like anger it, if Weaver is going to flash her camera and it's going to get mad and attack them. You don't know what's going to happen. Conrad is trying to like de-escalate the situation. They all get into like defensive position and she gets into like, I'm going to take a photo position. So they are all freaked out, and except for Conrad, who's like trying to de-escalate the situation. He grabs the gun. He's like, do not shoot this thing, otherwise we'll die. It turns around and walks away into the water, and there you go. This is one of the best character moments for Kong in the whole movie. Anyone who says there's no character development for Kong, they just flat out do not comprehend this scene somehow. So what happens is Jack walks over into a river and starts washing his wounds off from this helicopter crash he was just in. Washing his wounds off with some water, and a few minutes later, he's taking some drinks. A few minutes later, or moments later, Kong walks past this hill in the background, this mountain. Kong walks around it. He's in the water as well. He turns around, looks at the water. He gets down and starts picking at his wounds. He has never experienced bullets before, obviously. Now he has giant bullet holes in his arm, and he's picking at the wounds. It's hurting him, so he starts washing them off with water. He takes a big drink. Great character moment for Kong. Not only does it show he's vulnerable to things, which is needed for this kind of movie. Godzilla 2014 did a good job at that with having Godzilla and Ford lock eyes at that building collapse scene, but it humanizes Kong so much here, and it shows how intelligent he is, because not only is Kong doing the things that we just saw happen with a human character, which shows that he's humanized, but also it's really smart of him to start washing out the wounds. Like, you know, a massive size infection is not going to do him any good, so it's really cool. Kong takes a drink of water, He looks up. You think he just spotted Jack. He starts heading for Jack. He looks really angry. Jack freaks out, thinks he's about to die. All of a sudden, Kong just dips both hands straight into the water, pulls out this massive squid arm. This whole squid just reaches up from behind him and starts attacking him. He's fighting this thing. The fight's pretty brief. He rips some of its arms off, and then he like punches the thing to death. And as he's walking away, you just see him like start to like eat the thing raw. He just puts it in his mouth and starts chewing it down. AKA, he's an alpha predator, and this was them demonstrating that, not him eating humans. It was just him eating things on the island. Now, the natives jump scare Weaver. She's about to take some pictures of some ancient ruins, and all of a sudden one of their eyes opens up, and they were the ancient ruins because they got that camo paint. So they all take up defensive positions. Conrad's group is armed with guns. They're all in a standoff, and the natives armed with spears surround everyone. Hank Marlowe, now 32 years later from the beginning of the movie, runs out, ends the confrontation by taking Conrad back to the natives, Conrad and his group, back to the natives' home, and being super excited that people are there to rescue him. He says it's like eating a hot dog, drinking a beer, and watching a baseball game. And he says, but it's better because you're real, I think. So it's a funny moment as well. He's a really great character. You can tell this island has not been good to him. So he's all happy about them being there. The natives take down their defensive positions and they welcome everyone. They don't speak. I don't think any native has a single line of dialogue. They just do like motions to show their like gratitude or whatever. So we see the natives have a huge village. I love this Kong 33 reference, bordered by a massive wall meant to keep out giant monsters. So this wall is made very clear that in this version of the Kong story, of this Kong universe, this wall is not in defense of Kong. It is in defense of the Skullcrawlers and any other monster that would be willing to attack these natives. The natives are also really sophisticated. These are by far the smartest natives we've ever gotten for a Kong movie. They have some really intricate traps. They have the full wall built of spikes. They also have this really cool bridge that they pull some pulleys and the full bridge lifts over the ground, over the water in a U shape, and then it like recloses, and it's all made of wood logs. It's really cool. So these natives are really sophisticated. We find out, okay, so we go there, we find out that Marlowe has taken, basically he lives there, and everyone has taken into this huge ship that Marlowe says has been there since the 30s, maybe a reference to Kong 1933 being in the 30s. In this huge ship, the natives have murals all over the place detailing the history of Skull Island. Marlowe explains it to Conrad and his crew, and this is basically how it breaks down. There were natives on the island for thousands of years. They lived in fear of all the monsters on the island until one day a species rose above all others that was not only able to defend them, but it was also able to fight off the deadlier monsters, and that became their gods and their saviors. We find out one of their species is the beast named Kong, the thing that Marlowe ran into when he landed on the island way back when, that big thing that came up over the hill. We all know it's Kong. But this is where everyone else finds out that he's called Kong. This is the natives' god of the island, not because he's the strongest of his species, but as we'll find out here in a minute, he's the last. So Marlowe and the Japanese soldier who landed on the island, they become, quote-unquote, brothers, live together, best friends for many, many years. They built a boat out of their wrecked planes. They moved into the natives' camp. They civilized everything. They lived together, and they had apparently a great time, well, a great time for the situation they were in. And after a long enough time, the Japanese soldier was actually killed by the creatures known as the Skullcrawlers. So, as Marlowe says, if Kong is god of the island, the devils live below us. Conrad asks, what are they called? The Skullcrawlers. Why? Why do you call them that? I think it sounds neat. It's a pretty funny scene. Kong is seen as a good king, and he keeps to himself mostly. We cut to a clip of Kong being a good, kind king. He is just kind of walking around through the island, jumping from mountain to mountain. He's having a great time. It's really cool. So Kong's off on his own doing his own thing. Marlowe says Kong kills these creatures called the Skull Crawlers and thus protects the island, Skull Island, from these super deadly predators. But he's only been known to kill these Skull Crawlers when they're young. He can't kill them when they're too old. He's only killed them when they're young enough. We see clips of Kong fighting Skull Crawlers, plural. It's a really cool sequence, although we did see it before in the advertisements. We actually saw almost the full fight in the advertisements. This is what a lot of us thought would be the final battle. It's not. It's pretty much just a jump cut fight, just showing us like highlights of this battle of Kong fighting these two Skull Crawlers. This is the shot where he backhands the one, grabs the other, spins around, smashes him into the ground, grabs the other one's head, and then like throws it back, stomps one's head into the ground, killing it. Yeah, we called that one. He definitely killed that guy. And then he grabs the other one, throws it into a mountain, kills it that way. So it's a really cool scene. But that's pretty much, the fight is super short. It is almost exactly as short as it was in the trailers. It is a tad bit longer. There's a couple extended shots. We find out that there's a large skullcrawler that lives on the island, nicknamed the Big One. It is the one that is responsible for killing Kong's family and making him the last of his kind. I love this explanation. So this is what we find out why Kong attacked the helicopters. It's not because he was mad that they invaded his land. It's not because they were killing animals that they were dropping bombs on or endangering him in any way, shape, or form. He didn't care about that directly. He was mad because these helicopters dropped bombs and risked waking up the thing that made him the last of his species. These helicopters dropping bombs, Kong is thinking, oh, this is going to wake up that skullcrawler that killed my parents. That's going to suck. Which is a really interesting way to explain this. The fact that Kong, not only was he acting in defense of himself, he was acting in defense of everything, knowing that this thing is just going to wipe everything out. It killed my parents, it's going to kill me, and when I'm dead, no one's going to be able to defend this island from anything. So it's a really great explanation for why Kong acts the way he acts when he shows up. We also have a really cool scene directly after this where Weaver is standing out back of the native village taking some pictures. She sees this crashed helicopter. We don't see any survivors in it, but there's a crashed helicopter that landed right on one of these big, huge water buffaloes. She's trying super hard to lift the tail end of it off this buffalo so that the buffalo can get up and walk away. And all of a sudden, it just lifts right out of her hand. The helicopter lifts right out of her hand. She looks up, and Kong just kind of picked it up and is staring right at her. The buffalo gets up and walks away, and Kong drops it to his side and turns around and walks away. It's kind of like a, see what I did there? I'm better than you kind of thing. But it's also like a nice moment because he's doing a nice thing for everyone and being a great king. So I love that scene as well. I think, now I could be wrong here. Like I said, I've only seen the movie once. I think this is when we see Jack sit down on a log after he's had a long day. So he nails this letter that he wrote to his son on a tree. The letter basically says, sorry I didn't get back for your birthday. Some bad things happened and I'm caught in a sticky situation. So he sticks this letter wrote to his son on a tree. The log he's sitting on stands up. Jack turns around, grabs this gun, shoots this thing in the face multiple times. It is this giant stick bug we see in the trailer. It gets mad, and then it runs away. Pretty lame. It doesn't do anything. This bamboo stick forest bug creature kind of just stands up, roars at him. He shoots it in the face a couple times, and then it's like, oh, wow, that hurt, and then it runs away. Now, this is another jump scare right here. Another spoiler that I wish I didn't have to spoil because I love jump scares when they're done right. These ones are always done right. It's not like a horror movie kind of jump scare where it's a false scare. These ones are like legit scares that just happen to be done in the style of jump scares. Skullcrawler busts out of the bamboo forest, tears Jack into pieces. He is just shredded, blood everywhere. We don't actually see him die on screen. We just see the blood fly everywhere and we hear him get shredded into pieces. Really cool. We also hear him get fully eaten by the Skullcrawler. This is going to come into play later. That night, and you know, like I said, that could happen now, that could also happen the next morning. I don't quite remember when that specifically happens. That night, Marlowe shaves. There's some playful dialogue in the boat between Marlowe and some of the soldiers. Conrad and Weaver look at the northern lights, and then we cut to this big, huge skull mountain. Zoom into one of the eyes. Presumably, it's one of Kong's species. Zoom into one of the eyes on the other side. Another great character moment showing how humanized Kong is, showing him being. He's admiring it. He's sitting on this rock, staring up in the northern lights. Really reminds me of Kong 05 when he's watching the sunset and Anne is touching him and just saying beautiful. Reminded me of that so much. He's sitting on this rock. He's just looking up at these lights. He's admiring it. He cannot believe what he's seeing. It's a great character moment, humanizing Kong and showing just, how fully 3D he is. He's not just this big mean monster. He is an actual character, and a lot of people seem to not comprehend that, and I don't know how. Alright, we see Packard and Randa. There's some hostility between them. They are not having a great time here at this bonfire. So, Packard and Randa, they're arguing, and or not necessarily arguing, but they're not getting along very well. They're at this fire at night as well. The next morning, this part also, I don't know if I necessarily have the location 100% down. It could come a little bit earlier, or it could come a little bit later. Either way, this scene still happens at some point in the movie. A huge bloody handprint of Kong's is found on the side of a mountain. Packard makes it clear that they're not going only to the helicopter crash site to save Jack. They're going to finish the job. If they made Kong bleed, they can make Kong dead. So his plan is basically get the bombs from Jack's helicopter, get the guns from Jack's helicopter, kill this thing so it can't kill any more of us. Really pretty cool, honestly, and I like that a lot because it, like Sam Jackson has talked about, it gives Packard more of characterization, more of this revenge story arc, and also ties him into Captain Avers, or whatever his name is, from Moby Dick. I don't know, I didn't read that book. It looks dumb and it sounds dumb. Anyways, it gives him a pretty good revenge story arc. So they're going to that crash site for that reason. Mainly, they're not actually specifically looking for Jack, and the No Man Left Behind policy is kind of just his outside appearance so that he can get away with his real motives. So Randa stares at the hand. He puts his hand over it, noticing that he also has a wound on his hand. It's a pretty good character moment for him as well. I like the tie-ins there. And Randa stares at the hand. Cole comes up on him and tells him, they made Kong their enemy. We did this to ourselves. Then he connects it back in Vietnam. He went into a village, and because the Americans invaded this village in Vietnam, they forced the Vietnamese to be their enemies. This guy, he talks about this guy whose gun he confiscated, never saw a gun, never fired a gun, up until these people raided and killed everyone in his village. And, he basically says, he does flat out say, the enemy doesn't exist till you go looking for one, basically saying, this is our fault. And it also ties into his story at the end of the movie, which is, like I said, a very tragic ending for his character. He's a great character, very funny too. He's kind of just so direct and so desensitized to everything. It's really funny, and we found out that's because his mother, the way she taught him and raised him, he just kind of grew up that way, which is pretty interesting. The next morning, everyone repairs Marlowe's plane boat that him and the Japanese soldier worked on their time on the island, and before the Japanese soldier, of course, died. Now Marlowe finishes up the plane, now that he has some extra help from, our main crew with Conrad and everyone like that. So they start heading off upstream towards the northern end of the island. They're hoping that they wind up catching up with Packard on the way, but they're just mostly trying to get to the evac point before the 48 hours is up. Or I think at this point it might be, no, it's 48 hours at this point of the movie. So they're trying to get there before the 48 hours is up. Some pterodactyl-like creatures attack the boat along the way. They don't really do a ton. They just pretty much pick up this monarch scientist, lift him through the air, cut off his arm in the air, and then kill him from a distance. I think that might be the worst special effect in the movie. It doesn't look very great. The CGI guy, when he's silhouetted above the sun, doesn't really move all that well. That's the worst special effect of the movie, and it's not that bad. So I think, you know, these little pterodactyl things, you know, think of them what you will. They don't do anything other than kill this random guy. And also, this guy was saved from the wreckage of base camp earlier. This is what I was talking about. Along with Sam, the monarch biologist, she's Jingtian, and Brooks, Corey Hawkins. They're in this little Conrad group the whole time. I don't remember how they catch up to Conrad, and I also don't remember how do they live, because both these characters, Sam and Brooks, they should have died. The position you see them in when Kong smashes into base camp, I'm pretty sure the angle that they show Kong throw the ground from, I'm pretty sure they're like right in that area that he threw the ground in. So I don't know how they got out of there alive. It's pretty lucky if you ask me. Not that they do like anything really crazy important in this movie, so you could have probably had both of them die, I guess, just to have some more likable people. And also, I guess they're monarchs tie in this movie. They will most likely tie into the next couple of Godzilla movies. So the ship comes in range of Packard's radios. Everyone goes off. They basically say their location. They're like, we're 2 clicks behind you, so just wait there and we'll catch up to you, Packard. They're sailing upstream. They say, we're going to meet up in this area. Some flares are fired off, and they soon meet near a quiet creek where Marlowe introduces himself to everyone, and then he tells them all that they're a good group of boys to die with, and they will die. He doesn't lie. A lot of these guys wind up dead. So he says they will die, and, you know, we all saw that in the trailers, so it's pretty funny in the movies as well. They continue searching for Jack, who the audience knows is dead by this point, but they don't. They continue searching for Jack, finding a massive boneyard along the way. After some arguing, they actually decide that they're going to head straight through the boneyard, even though it is made clear by Marlowe. You know, he's been there for 32 years. He says, this place is a real no-no zone. You're going to die if you go here. But they go there anyways. So Jack is, if he's not found within 24 hours, then everyone has to abandon the search and head back to the rendezvous point, and that they're just going to call it there, and, you know, sorry for Jack if he's still alive, which he's not. They're like, yeah, we're going to focus on getting the majority of the group out before getting this guy out. So, well, entering the boneyard, Cole lights off a cigarette that ignites this explosive and wakes up a skullcrawler that runs out through the dark yellow mist, another jump scare. It throws up the head of Jack with the dog tag, and then it disappears. Randa freaks out. He stumbles around. We called this one the breakdown. Wow, I'm so surprised we got this one. So it was a news update. We broke down the B-roll footage, what was happening, because Randa drops the camera in his hands and flashes it in his face. He picks it up and looks at it, and his face looks like he's dying. Why this might be? Because he is. What happens is he looks in the photo, sees the skullcrawler standing right behind him. Immediately afterward, he looks up and is bitten in half. Skullcrawler eats him whole, well, not whole, but it eats all of his body. It eats his legs too. So it bites him in half, and then you hear the camera like, and it's like flashing pictures inside the skullcrawler, and it's making the skullcrawler like light up blue. And then the thing just takes off into the mist again, and you just see these blue flashes going off, and then it zips by the camera and another blue flash. A lot of us thought this was going to be like some sort of EMP electric ability. I did too. It's not. It's just pictures being taken inside the skullcrawler as it runs around. It's a really intense scene too, because everyone's just looking around. You hear like the, and then you just hear the, and when you hear the like puff, you just see this like blast of light in the distance, and you know that's where the skullcrawler is. It comes out, starts killing people. They mount these turrets on these triceratops heads, start firing at it. It is just eating everybody. It's a really intense scene. A lot of these people die right here. It's smacking people with its tail, eating people, knocking people into these areas. Really crazy. So there's only one skullcrawler in this whole boneyard too, and it's like 15 feet maybe. I thought that there was going to be a lot. So there's not. So it will not stop. At one point, Silvok sets off an explosion in a Kong skull and destroys a bunch of these green gas canisters that have some sort of potentially poisonous gas. Don't quite know. Conrad puts on a gas mask, takes Marlowe's katana, which is a great scene, takes his katana that he got from that Japanese soldier at the start of the movie, runs into this crowd. This Kong skull blows up, and it scares away all these pterodactyl-like creatures, these baby ones, and you just get these great slow-mo shots of Conrad spinning around, slicing them in half, cutting them apart. Amazing sequence. He's tearing straight through them. It's really awesome. So After this, Conrad rescues Sylvok, and Weaver sets off an explosion in the boneyard as well. This explosion she intentionally sets off, whereas the other people didn't necessarily intentionally set them off. Now, this one intentionally is set off right on a skullcrawler, blowing it to pieces. It sets on fire, and its neck burns away. It's a really cool scene. This is like the best thing she does all movie. I also think it's really great that she gets a kill shot. I think that's really cool and important for a female character in modern day to not only just be part of the team, but also to get a really cool character moment like this and a really cool, awesome moment like this where she gets a kill shot on one of the more deadly monsters of the movie. I think that's important. And it also, she gets one of the more impressive kills in the movie. She kills a skullcrawler, whereas Conrad only kills some pterodactyls. He doesn't really do anything very crazy, which is kind of disappointing. Now, they leave this boneyard area, regroup in this bamboo jungle where Jack died in. Tensions rise as Packard and Conrad get into a standoff over how to proceed. Packard, this is when they find out that Packard's plan is to, once Packard knows Jack's dead, his plan is to go get the guns, go get the bombs, kill Kong. So Marlowe, Weaver, Conrad, Sam, and Brooks, they're like, yeah, have fun with that. We're going to leave. Screw you guys. And the soldiers are all like, yeah, same thing. Screw you guys. We're going to go kill Kong. And then we have a monarch scientist in the mix who's just like, they have a funny line about, are you going to sit inside, or are you going to sit on the porch, or are you going to play with the big dogs, or something like that. And he's like, well, I definitely am not sitting on the porch. He probably should have, because he dies shortly afterward. Now, they head off to this helicopter wreck site. They find it, and they recover the weapons that they were looking for. Packard and Weaver at one point break off from Brooks, Sam, and Marlowe because they want to go investigate. They like want to go get the high ground and see if they can spot the ship from the high ground, because they're not spotting the ship from where they are. They're not spotting it from in the jungle at any time soon. We find out, this is one of the funniest scenes in the movie, that there are these giant ants on Skull Island. Not only are there giant spiders, giant ants on Skull Island. They chirp like birds, and it's just a really funny scene. You'll have to see. I'm not going to spoil this one or this joke because it's a joke. It's not like it's anything crazy, but it's a really funny joke, and it's told by Marlowe. He's talking about how, yeah, it sounds like a bird, doesn't it? And then he says they're ants, but it's the way they do it is really funny. So we'd never actually see the ants either. Now, when on a hill overlooking this river, Conrad spots where the boat is before Kong walks out through the fog, stands there staring at Weaver and Conrad. Weaver snaps some photos of it, and then she reaches out, touches him on the nose, and they have a really cool moment where they're looking into each other's eyes. Another great humanization moment for Kong. Also sets up kind of a love interest thing, but not really, which I liked because it's a reference to the other Kong movies, but they don't put it at the forefront of the story to where it gets distracting. Now, Kong slowly backs off into the fog again. Before he can finish leaving, though, an explosion goes off nearby. Kong looks over, sees these huge fireballs setting off from the forest. What actually happened is that Packard and his small army set up. They got to the crash site, they got the bombs, and then they set up this huge trap at this lake where explosions are going to just be set off all through the forest, leading to this lake where they set tons of, I think they set gasoline in the lake, and when Kong gets there, they plan to set it all on fire. They do. So what happens is Kong shows up just as they planned. Huge explosion reveals his silhouette. He heads straight for them, gets in the water. He's furious. Again, these bombs have the potential to wake up the only thing that can kill him that he knows of. So he goes into this lake. He is pissed. So they throw these what do they throw, like a Molotov cocktail into the water or something, or a lighter or something like that into the water. It all bursts up into flames. Kong is just engulfed in fire, and he's spinning around trying to wave it off of him. Then he busts through it, throwing the water through the air. He's roaring at these soldiers. He smashes a couple of them, gets up on land, stomps a couple of them to death, beats his chest, roars, and then passes out. Yep, I thought he was fireproof. Nope. nope, Godzilla's atomic breath is going to have a lot of effect on Kong. So Kong falls right over at this point. Kong falls right over. He was not ready for that. The fire it got to him. So he's weakened, falls over, and is passed out. Also, I want to take this time to mention it is 100% confirmed in this movie. Kong is an adolescent, and his growing is not even near his max height, not even near his max he's not near his prime strength, prime height. He is not near any of that. It's 100% confirmed by Marlowe that he is an adolescent. They never use the word adolescent. They just basically say, yeah, Kong's a baby and he's still growing. He'll grow up into something a lot more dangerous than what he is right now, a lot more formidable also. They basically just flat out said to the audience, guess what? When Kong fights Godzilla, he'll be ready to fight Godzilla, which is really cool. It also settles all that debate. So, they set some explosives around Kong's head. They plan to blow him up, like blow his head up and kill him. Packard does this, and he's against Kong, obviously. While this is happening, Kong gets Marlowe and Weaver to the lake. They have a standoff, another standoff in front of the sleeping, passed out Kong. And it's a really intense moment. Again, you don't know who's going to die here. Once again, this whole cast is expendable. None of them show up in Godzilla 2014, which means we have no idea which one of these guys are going to make it out. If any, my pre-prediction was that very few of them, I thought like only 4 of them were going to make it off the island alive. So what happens is, this standoff is going on. Conrad gets in front of Kong, and then Weaver gets in front of Kong, and they're like, please don't do this, you'll kill us all either way if you blow him up. Then another gun standoff shows up. They all point guns at each other. Eventually, even some of Packard's men are like, wait a minute, yeah, no, Conrad's right here. Kong really didn't do anything. We did bomb him first. Then they turn their guns on Packard, and he's like, alright, I guess I'm done. All of a sudden, the water explodes, and this massive skull crawler comes out. This is the big one. It starts heading towards them. Now, I can't quite remember 100% what happens here. I think that the big one winds up chasing off Conrad's crew. And while all that's happening, Packard looks at Kong, who starts to wake up, plans to blow him up. He's like, you know what, I'm going to die either way. So he plans to blow him up and is like, yeah, at least I'll take this guy out with me. He says something, I don't quite remember what he's in the middle of saying. It's some sort of sentence involving the F word. And then Kong just like looks up, punches him into the ground, and it is awesome. Kong like well laying there. His hand just flies up, smashes Packard straight into the ground. Packard's dead. Yep, Sam Jackson died. Really cool. So, I don't remember what happens after this either. Maybe Kong falls back asleep. I don't know. Maybe the Skullcrawler like knocks him over again. I don't quite remember. Either way, no matter what happens here, everyone, including Conrad and all of Packard's men who left and made it out of there alive, they all head to the boat. This is their last chance. It's the morning now. It's around the morning. It's like sunrise-ish. When the final fight happens, it is flat out daytime. So our survivors, including Conrad, Packard's men, they're on their way to where the boat should be, but Brooks already sailed away in it because they told him if they're not back by a certain time, just leave without us, and he took their advice and he left without them. So things look grim. Cole decides, yeah, it feels so bad for him. So Cole decides, oh, we're gonna die if someone doesn't step up here. The Skullcrawler in the boneyard died from explosives. I guess I'll be the one to set off these explosives. He pulls out 2 grenades, 1 on each hand, pops them open, walks right up to the Skullcrawler ready to die. He keeps saying, like, come on, do it. He's crying here. He's talked a lot about his mother throughout the movie, so he's got family members that you know he cares about and that you know care about him. He walks up to this Skullcrawler, ready to sacrifice himself. He is hoping that it'll eat him, and then he'll blow up inside its stomach and kill it. Nope, Skullcrawler, the big one, doesn't have any of that. It turns around, nails him with its tail. He goes flying for miles, hits this rock, just gets flattened, and then explodes. And this huge explosion comes off in this mountain. And that, he dies a worthless death, which is really sad because he's such a good character. And I know it's supposed to be that way, and, the emotional impact is not lost. So Weaver runs up a mountain to get Brooks' attention with the flares. The big one starts to advance on Conrad and soldiers. All of a sudden, Kong drops from the sky, from a mountain, not the sky. He drops from a mountain, smashing a rock into the Skullcrawler's face. The thing like falls on the ground. They have a little tussle. The fight breaks out. This is the end fight. It is incredible. So Kong looks like he's about to lose at one point because the Skullcrawler turns around, whaps him with its tail. Kong goes flying into this boat. He crashes into this boat. Also, if this Skullcrawler's tail is powerful enough to send Kong flying, and Kong's bigger than it, can you imagine how much force was slapped right into Cole? I mean, that guy suffered the worst death in the movie, other than the guy who got eaten alive, of course. So Kong, he flies crashing into this it's an old shipwreck, and this boat, it's a massive boat. He lands straight in it. The anchor flies up, gets like enlodged in this rock, and Kong's all tangled up in this chain from the anchor. He can't get out of it. The Skullcrawler goes up and is about to kill him. All of a sudden, Brooks shows up, starts firing the boat's turret at the Skullcrawler, distracts it. The thing runs after them. During its reload, when everyone on the boat looks like they're about to die, Weaver fires off a flare, nails the thing in the face. It explodes right in its eye. The Skullcrawler gets all mad, starts heading towards her, knocks her into the water. Kong breaks free from his chains, roars. The Skullcrawler turns around. He whips the anchor into that thing. He uses it as a weapon. Uses the anchor on the chain, nails it into the Skullcrawler, runs up, like twists it through the thing's arm, tears the thing's arm open, and then he stabs it into the thing a couple times. Uses this thing as a weapon. I think it is safe to say, if you know the King Kong vs. Godzilla quote, Kong indeed is a thinking animal here. So he uses a weapon. He also uses a tree as a weapon. We saw that in the trailer. Lifts up the tree, wipes all the branches and pine needles off, uses it as like a baseball bat, smacks that thing straight into the Skullcrawler's face, rips it apart. At one point, Kong grabs the Skullcrawler, tears open its jaw, Kong 33 style, but then it bites straight through his hand and he has to let go and it gets off. He smacks its head into a rock and it looks like he kills it. Which is, sad because they were about to do that 33 thing. He grabs its mouth, starts to rip it open, looks like he's about to break its jaw. You can see like he's struggling here, and then it just bites straight through one of his hands and he has to let go. It's a really cool scene, just knowing like what could have happened. Now, Weaver is picked up by Kong. Kong saves her. He's holding her in his hand, kind of looking at her like, oh, is she alive? She was in that water for a long time. He's kind of freaked by it. He's staring at her. Clearly, he has an emotional connection to her, and she has one to him. Skullcrawler attacks him from behind, eats his hand with Weaver inside. It is a super intense scene. You don't know if she's going to be dead or not. He balls his hand into a fist. This Skullcrawler wraps its tongue around his arm, pulls it straight into its mouth. I really don't want to say these spoilers. This spoiler in general, like this spoiler particular, is the one that I said in my spoiler-free review I would not talk about in this review. However, given the nature of this review, I'm gonna. So cover your ears for like the next minute and a half or so, because you don't want to hear how Kong deals with this Skullcrawler before the movie comes out. If you're like, you know what, spoilers enhance the movie, good for you. You still don't want to hear this, but if you're going to listen anyways, Kong, his hand goes all the way down the Skullcrawler's throat, and then you just see him like start to reach into it, and you're like, what is he doing? So Kong reaches down the thing's throat into its stomach. We don't know what happens, but all of a sudden Kong rips his hand right out of the Skullcrawler's mouth. His arm is completely wrapped around in just guts, intestines, the tongue. He guts this Skullcrawler straight out of its mouth. He grabbed its guts, its intestines, everything on the inside of it, ripped it straight out of its mouth. It is so cool. There's no way to describe how cool it is. Kiss of Death from Godzilla 2014. He decapitates the Muto. This one, he tears the freaking thing's guts out through its mouth. It is so cool. Like, I cannot describe how cool it is. So then he saves Weaver. She's fine. After killing the Skullcrawler, the thing that made him the last of his kind. His revenge story arc is complete, and now he definitely is the apex predator of Skull Island. Our crew makes it to the evac point in time. Our closing shot is Kong rounding this cliff, looking over, seeing these 3 helicopters, the evac helicopters flying over. He looks at this thing all pissed off. He sees these helicopters and he's like, oh, yeah, I know these. And then we cut to black. Did they make it off Skull Island? Yeah, they did. So, although it leaves it on an open ending like that, when the end credits are playing, we see an old-timey video showing Marlowe reuniting with his long-lost wife and the son he never met but knew he had when he left for World War II, and the last radio call he had with his wife, he found out she was about to give birth, and he never knew what happened after that point. He thinks that her and his son have moved on, don't care about him anymore. He gets there, they welcome him with open arms. It's a great reuniting scene. It's very touching. I don't think there's any dialogue or any sound at all. I think it's just like this nice song plays, and it's a very happy moment. And everyone gets, and at the end, he even gets to sit down and eat his hot dog, drink a beer, and watch the baseball game just like he always wanted to. This scene shows that everyone did make it off everyone who was alive did make it off Skull Island okay. That is very few people, though. That is, who is that? That's Jason Mitchell's, once again, I forgot his name. Oh, that's Mills, Brooks, Weaver, Conrad, and Marlowe, I think. Oh, and Sam. Those are the 6 that make it off the island out of this huge cast of people that go there. So, there you go. The movie is over. After credits scene? What is it? It is, according to the soundtrack, the Monster Mash. I know that's a super weird name. No, that's just the name on the soundtrack. So what it is, after credits scene, black screen. Conrad is commenting about, oh, you people, you like sitting here watching us in the dark. You know, he's like, yeah, you think this is, you enjoy this? And it's funny because, you know, you're sitting there in the dark, and he's commenting on you like sitting and watching people in the dark. You know, you just are watching the movie, and it's a funny Ferris Bueller reference. It's like, oh, you're still here? What are you doing here? It's like that kind of moment. But when it's revealed what's going on, it is really cool. So you see, it like fades in. You see Conrad and Weaver sitting at this desk, and they're in this interrogation room, and you don't quite know what's happening yet. Conrad throws a pen right at what you were previously looking through, which was a two-way mirror. The pen bounces off. He gets up and says, we get it. There is no island. I promise I won't tell the Russians. Weaver says, I will tell the Russians. They're obviously just trying to get out of this situation. And all of a sudden, the door opens up. Brooks and Sam walk in. They walk through the door. They announce that, yeah, we're with Monarch. You're now part of Monarch. And this is the last line of the movie is, Kong is not the only king. We see a bunch of cave paintings, and music swells up. A bunch of cave paintings. One of Godzilla standing there looking epic. One of Rodan. I couldn't quite tell if that was supposed to be Rodan or just a one-headed Ghidorah. I was going to be really mad if that was a one-headed Ghidorah. But it's a cool-ish Rodan design. Of course, we haven't seen detail yet. But there's a Rodan design. We see Mothra's cave painting. We end with, we don't end with it, but we get a really good shot of Ghidorah's cave painting, the biggest one of all of them. Then we see a shot of Godzilla fighting Ghidorah, and it is so cool. Ghidorah is massive compared to Godzilla, and he's fighting him. This also shows that not only do all 4 of these monsters exist, like do people who have lived on Earth know about these 4 monsters' existence before Kong Skull Island, but it also shows that at one point or another, Godzilla and Ghidorah have already fought, and that means Godzilla King of Monsters is gonna be their rematch. I cannot wait! It is so cool. We fade to black. Godzilla roars. It is amazing. It is also the best way to end this movie because it ties perfectly into the opening for 2014. This movie ends with some cave paintings of Godzilla. 2014 opens with cave paintings of Godzilla. It is so cool. Whoever came up with that idea, great job. Great way to set up Godzilla King of Monsters. Great way to make this MonsterVerse work. I love it. It was a hit. So after seeing this movie only once, before it came out in theaters for the premiere in my state, after seeing it only once, listening to the soundtrack a couple times, hearing multiple movie reviews, doing background research on the movie, news updates, breakdowns, everything like that, and a lot of thought, I still give it a 9.5. Now, this movie is so much fun. It is incredible. I love this movie so much. Now, this is a 9.5 from a purely entertainment perspective. If I was going to rate it on, it doesn't necessarily have the deepest story. Like, there's no deep references I could see going on here. There's no Shin Godzilla story here. It's not a human central story either. If you were expecting a human central story, go watch Shin Godzilla. Oh wait, you're gonna complain about how human central that is. I forgot. No one in this fan base is ever happy. So yeah, this movie is super cool. Yeah, and this is, like I said, it's from an entertainment standpoint, from the fact that it did its job. I was never not entertained. This movie is just so good. I'm sure in a couple years when I do, or I guess 1 year when I do Kong-a-thon, this, of course, this rating will change by then, because I will have a lot more time to reflect on the movie, compare it to other movies, see how it holds up in a year or so, see how it holds up after multiple viewings, and this is just my first, or technically second, rating for the movie. This might even change when announcement. I'm going to be doing a spoilers in-depth review with Andres Perez, aka Kaiju Noir, one of my favorite YouTubers. Me and him did a review of Shin Godzilla together, so we'll do another one of these in-depth reviews for Kong Skull Island here in a couple of weeks. Maybe my review will change by then, because I'm definitely seeing this movie on Thursday. Hopefully, I will see it again multiple more times before me and him do our review. I plan to see this movie at least, and I know this is like a weird number for me to shoot for, I plan to see this movie at least 4 times in theaters. The reason for this is because I saw 2014 4 times in theaters, and I saw Shin Godzilla 4 times in theaters. So I need to see this one 4 times in theaters at the very least. I could see it more. Maybe I'll set the goal to 5 from now on. Who knows? I love these movies. And like I said, the 0.5 is taken away for a couple reasons. Number one, and I might even, like I said, I might lower this score the more I reflect on this and the more I think about, does this aspect really work or not. Number one, the music, though it is really good, and I do like the soundtrack, there is some weird guitar riffs that feel very out of place during the movie. Number two, some of the characters are overhyped and overshadowed by other people, such as Tom Hiddleston's character, overhyped, yet there are other characters that are a lot better than him that just don't get as much time to shine as he does. Then there is, and now that I think about it, I might even lower the rating this review to just a solid 9. So the more I think about it, I'm going to leave it at a 9.5, I guess, just because, and then I'll lower it when I do my second review with Kaiju Noir. So, to at least a 9. So, yeah, the music, sometimes there's some weird guitar riffs. The overuse of slow-mo is, it's a bit distracting at times. I don't necessarily love the slow-mo. I think the visuals in this movie are so damn good, but the overuse of slow-mo kind of takes away from the pacing, because you're like engaged in this action sequence, slow-mo to Kong throwing this helicopter into the ground, and then it explodes, and there's a big fireball, and then all of a sudden we're back at normal speed. He's decking helicopters left and right. Slow-mo of Kong bashing this tree against this Skullcrawler's face, and then next scene, we're just fast-mo, and then again, he's smacked through the air, and then slow-mo. It's just kind of distracting. Don't necessarily love it. I'm going to keep that at a 9.5 this review. This movie is so damn good. Go see this movie. And, yeah, that is my Kong Skull Island spoilers review. I hope you guys enjoyed. Pretty long review, I think. Yeah, obviously it's a pretty long review. So, thank you guys all for watching. I hope you enjoyed. D-Man out.
Who spotted me, by the way?
That young fellow over there.
movie Kong Skull Island with a few hundred of my closest friends. Yeah! These folks are in for a real treat. They're going to love Kong Island, so are you. And before we get going, we're going to see who can do the best King Kong roar. Let's go. Ma'am, let me hear your best King Kong roar. God. She's had caffeine. All right, sir, your best King Kong roar.
Roar.
Oh, gosh, that was King Kong on Zoloft. All right, let's go over here real. Oh, this woman thinks she can do it. Give me your best King Kong roar. That's not bad. Now, all right, anybody else? Oh, gosh, hold on. I'm going to come up here. You got All right.
I gave it a shot.
Oh, she's beating her chest. Yeah. Oh, my gosh. Wait, this guy sounds like he's got nasal congestion, I'm pretty sure. Anybody? Go for it, little girl. Oh, man. Yeah, she means business. All right, guys. We're about to get started. King Kong. It's in theaters soon. You'll want to see it. On the count of 3, everyone say King Kong. You ready? 1, 2, 3. King Kong! And make some noise for Kong Skull Island! Cast of Kong Skull Island on the Everyday Show, 10 o'clock on Fox. Y'all have a great time watching the movie.
It would not be rented.
There was an extra butter.
Which would probably cost me less money. Yeah.
Oh, we're gonna put that.
Well,